Hey everyone, welcome back to Command Phase. Today we're going to talk about the Munitorm Field Manual released this past Friday. And while I'd like to be discussing which units are good and bad and which armies made out really well with their points costs, today we're going to be talking about something a lot more fundamental, namely the point structure of the entire game of Warhammer 40,000 itself. If you've ever built an army list in 9th edition, you're used to this. Each unit has an amount of points you pay for every model, weapon, and piece of war gear that make it up. This has been radically simplified in 10th to this. All the weapons and war gear options are baked into the overall cost of the unit, and you don't get the same flexibility in choosing how many models make up the squad. And my first thought when I saw this was, wait a second, this looks familiar. Now, when you build a 40k army, you pick your unit, choose its squad size, pay points, and then decide what to equip it with from a predetermined list of options. This is functionally the same as Aegis Sigmar, GW's flagship fantasy game, where you do the exact same thing. You pick your unit, your size, and then your weapon options, and you're good to go. This seems on the surface like it might work, but is it a good idea? Is it good game design? Now, I want to try to answer this question fairly without jumping to conclusions based on my gut reaction, which is that this is horrible. Maybe I just feel that way because I loved complicated list building and tinkering with my army list to try to extract every last drop of value possible. So, we're going to try to give Games Workshop a fair shake. And in their defense, this way of doing things is very accessible. Building an army feels way easier. You just pick your unit and go. I also thought it would be faster until I sat down and actually tried to build a few lists and found that it was actually difficult to evenly fill out 2,000 points with such clunky and awkward point values. Most of my army lists ended up at like 1975 or 1995 points, and it was a little frustrating to constantly swap things out to try to get as many points as possible for my list. Still, maybe I'm just a competitive tryhard, and casual players might appreciate that they can build a workable list in 5 minutes, even if they have some points to spend left over. So, it's accessible and technically faster, but that doesn't answer our main question. Is it good for the game? To do that, we're going to hop over to Aegis Sigmar and take a look at a war scroll to see what we can learn. Here's the war scroll for a unit of Stormdrake Guard. You can see it has stats and a couple of weapon options to choose from. This unit always gets the Fangs and Talons, but when you put it in your army, you have to choose a weapon to take between the Lance and the Warblade. And this is our main area of concern. This is the main place the design of the game can break. Which one do we take? If the cost of both of these options is baked into the overall cost of the datasheet, they need to be equivalent choices. There can't be a clear best option here. And if you just look at the War Scroll, these weapons actually look equivalent, especially when you consider that the Lance gives a bonus to AP and damage when you charge. If we're just looking at the weapons, this looks pretty good. The sword is for when you're tied up in combat, the lance is for when you actually charge and deal damage. But there's a problem here. First, this unit also gives other bonuses when it charges. Second, Stormcast Eternals have multiple ways in their book to set up charges, so you're probably going to be charging a lot of times with this unit. In the wider context of the overall army's design, the Lance is looking like far and away the best option. And this is the case for every tournament Stormcast list that you see. You only ever see the Lance. So this is the illusion of choice. It looks like we have some options here, but in the final analysis, one of them is clearly superior. But that's just Age of Sigmar. Maybe in Warhammer 40k, these weapon options are actually equivalent. So let's hop over to a 40k datasheet and take a look. These are Devastators, and they have a ton of weapon options, each of which is more complicated than the Age of Sigmar weapons because they're ranged. They have a 120 point price tag, and you get to choose 4 of these weapons to take for free. So we're going to ask the same question here. Are these weapon options equivalent? Now, on the surface, it may appear that they are, both gun aside. The grab cannon is for short-range anti-vehicle, the las cannon is a longer-range option. The heavy bolter is for anti-infantry, and the missile launcher is a bit of a take-all-comers weapon. The melta doesn't look that great, but 4 out of 5 ain't bad. Maybe these are just different tools for different jobs. If they all have equally viable use cases, then we don't need points. But if we take a look at these units in the wider context of the Space Marine faction, just like we did for Age of Sigmar, then problems begin to emerge. Space Marines have access to a ton of rerolls via Oath of Moment. They have drop pods they can use to close the distance with their enemy, often on turn 1, setting up powerful alpha strikes at short range. And they have models that are better at destroying vehicles at long range or using multi-meltas up close. So viewing this unit from a wider lens, there really is only one or two options here, the grav cannon or the heavy bolter. Maybe this is similar to Aegis Sigmar, but maybe that's a bad example. Let's look at another squad. Let's look at Retributors. They look good on paper too. Heavy bolters for anti-infantry, heavy flamers for anti-light infantry and board control, and multi-meltas for anti-tank. The heavy flamer is even better than a regular flamer. It's been given additional strength and AP in order to kind of elevate it to the same level of quality as the other weapons that are here. So, yeah, maybe we're good. These all look equivalent. Maybe we, again, don't need points here. But there are problems here. Sisters of Battle, as a faction, have access to Miracle Dice, giving them the ability to guarantee that their wound rolls go through and that their damage is high. They even have a particularly nasty combo with the Triumph of St. Catherine and the Dialogus that allows Retributors to do 6 guaranteed damage with each one of their multi-melta shots. So, again, we see the same scenario. Even though there are a ton of weapon options here, there really is only one clear choice. You're taking the multi-melta every time. Let's return to our bullet point list. Is this good for the game? Well, it looks like weapon options might actually not be equivalent. There might still be best in slot loadouts for each particular squad. This will discourage build diversity. We'll probably see the same units with the same loadouts in a lot of games simply because they outperform the other options on their datasheet. And ninth, this problem could be mitigated by using points values to introduce granularity, making options that underperform cheaper and increasing the cost of the ones that do actually overperform. But without that system, Games Workshop has written themselves into a corner where each of their weapons on the datasheet must be equally effective. As we've seen, that's extremely hard to pull off. Now, I'm not trying to come hard for GW here. I actually like this design direction in theory. It's a great way to make list building easier and more accessible. But I think ultimately this design direction will blow up in their face. I think without some kind of change or introduction of points costs when codexes actually arrive, we might end up in a metagame where stale list building where we only ever see certain squads on the table. And I, for one, think that's not a good direction for 40k to go in. So that's going to be it for this video today. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you like this change? Has it made list building easier and more fun for you? I know where I stand on the issue, but I'm curious what you all think. If you like this video, please consider dropping a like. It really helps the channel become more visible. And please subscribe as well so you don't miss out on any more 40k content. I would really appreciate it. If you'd like to buy me a coffee or support my addiction to plastic men, you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/commandface. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the tabletop. Cheers.